is 6:31 on my clock. We will call the meeting to order. First item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Roll call. Do we? You just take an agenda?
Yeah.
All right. And then we've got the role of the Planning Commission listed on here on the agenda for those who aren't familiar with. Approval of the agenda.
Didn't take roll call yet. You're good.
Well, I was just buzzing by it. So. Any additions or corrections to the agenda?
No. Motion to approve.
Second.
I got a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Move on to the consent agenda. The only item on the consent agenda is Planning Commission minutes from March 7th. Any additions or corrections to those?
Nothing here.
Nope.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I got a motion from Nick and a second from Sarah. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Open forum. Open forum. Anyone here for non-agenda items? John, anyone online?
No, just us.
All right. We will move on. Number 7, council update.
So on the 12th, we had Hennepin County Commissioner Kevin Anderson came in and gave a spiel. Talked about the fire training facility, the numbers, and possible locations. Small discussion on future park dollars, although we had another related discussion last time. We added a technical review to the treatment facility, just to kind of an overview to make sure we're not missing something. Some contracts. And then last meeting, development on Levy Street, that was approved pretty much as you guys had released it. The Ziegler Development Conditional Use Permit was approved. Driven auto sales, that was approved. I know you guys had voted against it. I think the bulk of the concert, at least my opinion was, and I think it was common, was that there was no downside to approving that. And it seemed like it was really aimed at, the property, or the leasing guy. He could make more money with it, so it was approved. Quick Trip concept review went through. It sounded like most of the council was okay with it. And we had a long discussion on park improvements, how much money we're spending on each park. It was basically the two large parks, Stevens and the one next to Bremer Trails, just how much money we're spending in there and what it was going to. That was it.
Sounds good. We'll move on to public hearing. Just a note, there are none tonight. Typically, IUPs would have a public hearing, correct?
Yes.
At the Planning Commission. And because the notice couldn't go out in time, the items that are up for IUPs will hold the public hearing at the city council meeting?
Yeah, so yeah, I'm going to take the blame for that. I went on vacation over spring break and came back and realized I missed the publication deadline. So public hearings for the items tonight will go to the city council on Tuesday, the 23rd, April 23rd, 6:30 PM.
So, just for clarification purposes, normally we would have an IUP with a public hearing, so. I guess with that, we'll move into number 9, new business. 9A, interim use permit for extended home business, Lawn Smart.
Just for clarification on that, Peter, that means city council will run and vote on the public hearing. Planning commission will not be present nor need to vote for those public hearings, correct?
You still need a recommendation, but,
Okay.
so you're not.
We're not,
You can accept public comment, and I would encourage that, but it's not a public hearing where we've advertised to neighbors. That will occur prior to the council meeting. If that made sense. Yeah. Okay. This is Lawn Smart. Oh,
I think I have a question on that
Sure.
before we get into these, just because it pertains probably to both. I know one of the, if the applicant wanted to extend and have the public hearing here versus there,
so the commission has the option, okay, so let's think of procedurally, the commission has the option,
Or
you
is
can
it-
make a recommendation for approval, denial, or table an item. Let's say if you table an item, that stays here. The council would still hold the public hearing. My advice to the council would be to, if you have members of the public, they would come in and say what it is that they want to say, and then attend. I would ask them to attend the next planning commission meeting where you would
Okay.
discuss it again.
okay.
It gets a little fuzzy then.
It gets a lot longer process,
Yes.
because that's published and we have to have it based on the published date.
Yes, so the
Okay.
council will still have to hold the public hearing on Tuesday, April 23rd, 6:30 PM.
Got it. All right,
Yeah.
that helps clarify it.
Okay. So the first item, this is for Lawn Smart. It's located at 17480 117th Avenue. So roughly, it's at the intersection of 117th and Dayton Parkway. So the applicant is Michael Groves. He's requesting an interim use permit for a home extended business. So a home extended business is, to describe it in summary, it is a business that's larger than what you would hold in your house. So an example of, I'm going to call a city planner that works out of a spare bedroom. This is bigger than that. So the property is, I believe, I'm going to call it about 4.5 acres in size, or 4.6 acres, I believe. They have, it's an outdoor or lawn care maintenance business, and they, I'll have the applicant, they'll give a better description about it than what I can provide. But they have, I believe, 4 full-time employees and then up to about a dozen seasonal employees. So there's kind of 2 parts to this. The first part is lawn care. So you have employees that are coming in the property, pick up equipment, they go to the work site, do their job, and then come back and drop off the equipment and then go home again. The second part is the seasonal storage business. Just to kind of, let's see if I have an aerial photo. So the primary, what's used for the lawn care business is the existing accessory building, which is used for storing construction equipment. Behind the building, there's a couple of fuel tanks. There's, I'm not sure if it shows up on here, there's a shipping container that's used for salt storage. And then it also doesn't show on here, there's a carport that's used to store mowers and other smaller equipment. The area that's in front of the accessory building is used for employee parking, and then there's other, whether it's trucks or other equipment that's just kind of stored around here. Along the east property line will be attachments for skid steers as well as snow plows. I should add, the area that's along, I'm going to say on the property to the east is fairly heavily wooded. Having gone out there in the winter, you can see through the trees. I can't imagine that you could during the summer. So it is screened by the neighboring property. The storage business, there's approximately 20 spaces for outdoor storage of boats, RVs, and other material. And I'm grouping these two as part of the home extended business. As you know, it's whether there's two businesses, it's still the same permit. Within the code, there's a number of requirements that a home extended business needs to meet. Just to summarize it again, there's portions of the business that are compliant and other areas that are not compliant. It does allow the city council to say that although the business is larger or may not necessarily meet all the requirements word for word with the city code, the council may have the determination that it is still appropriate for this location. So in this case, outside storage is allowed if the property is larger than 2.5 acres and the outside storage is screened. In this case, the property is larger than 2.5 acres. I'm going to say that the outside storage the boat storage is very screened. Some of the equipment is screened depending on the season. The business needs to be set back 100 feet away from neighboring homes, which it is compliant with. The home extend business can use up to one building, which I'm saying in here no, but it can be. And when I say no, I'm referring to the use of the shipping container in the carport. So I think, and I don't want to speak for the applicant, but I think it could be brought into compliance. The home extend businesses are limited to 2 employees, which this business has more than that, as well as limited to 2 trucks, which this business has, I believe, I'm going to say about a half dozen. And then once again, the council can, although these are the requirements of the code does allow the council to determine that this is an appropriate place for a larger business than what it states in the code. So it's kind of saying that every location is very unique to every business, and it's not a one-size-fits-all for everything. So again, the applicant is here. I'm sure that they could provide a better description of the business than what I can, but this is a quick summary of it.
All right. I guess before we begin, I want to go on record saying that I may have a perceived conflict of interest. Just to note, from May of 2021 to May of 2023, I did use this property for storage of my boat, but currently not stored there. Right now, it's sitting at my parents' place. So just wanted to put that out there. Very familiar with the site, having used it. Very familiar with the uses that go on there. I don't believe I show any bias with what the applicant's trying to do here. So just wanted to make you guys aware of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, Mike, do you want to come forward and tell us a little bit more about the business and the operations?
Should I sit?
Yeah.
Does it matter?
Whatever makes you more comfortable.
Yeah, whatever. Just slide the mic over if you're. Name and address would be for the record as well.
Name is Mike Groves. Address is 17480 117th Avenue North in Dayton, 55327. John, I mean, we do, John kind of explained it. We do lawn care, landscaping, and snow removal in the winter. It's kind of all one business. So in the winter, our full-time staff is a lot lower because we can't keep everyone employed. We rely on a lot of, not even part-time, just when it snows, we need guys to run equipment. In the summer, it's, roughly 12 between the lawn and landscape. We've got about 7 months of full-time work on the lawn side, same with the landscaping. So, but yeah, the business really, it's run out of my house, but like John said, the people are showing up, grabbing equipment, leaving for the day. We typically run 410s, so we're working 7 to 5 Monday through Thursday. They're out mowing, landscaping, and they're back in at night, and they're gone. So by no means is this a business that's running 12 employees on site. It is a business that runs off site, essentially. So I can be more specific if you'd like.
I mean, how early do people show up in the morning? And,
Yep.
I'm just thinking if I were your neighbor
Yeah.
and you got a bunch of people coming in the morning.
Yeah, so call time is 7 typically,
Okay.
and then we're typically done by 5.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Assume you have a good relationship with your neighbors. Do they come talk to you about noise complaints or anything like
I actually went to both of them when I found out that, I had to do this, and I thought for sure it was my neighbor to the east. They said they didn't, it wasn't. I used the word ratted me out, but they said it wasn't them, and my neighbor to the west can't see anything because it's absolutely so the trees are too heavy. And like John said, in the summer, my neighbor to the west, they can see the red barn, but the equipment itself is hidden. And if that's the issue, we can move equipment around. I mean, it doesn't have to be against the property. We've got plenty of room to put things elsewhere. But I think we've damaged the fence on the east side, which I'm pretty sure is actually mine. That's about the only complaint my neighbor has given me. And I certainly am happy to rectify that for him. But I've got great relationships with both of them. I typically plow their driveways for free because they've got to be in their 70s or 80s. And so I was surprised to hear, well, when I thought it was one of them, I was surprised to hear that. But long answer to a short question, yes, I have a great relationship with both.
So to clarify, so the permit started out based on a complaint for zoning.
That was going to be my question, is how it started. Just out of curiosity, don't need to know who it was, but if it was complaint driven or something that staff found out
So
through their own.
just, and Mike, maybe you can help clarify this, since I know the property pretty well. When I was visiting it, you were about the same size operation you are today.
Yeah.
I mean, more or less. And winter storage is in, and you're in for 6 months, give or take, snow.
Right. Yeah,
It's not-
there's no activity in the winter.
It's
on the
not
storage
in and
side.
out. I was a boat storage. I would park it there so it wasn't in my driveway, and I was in and out pretty frequently. I saw no one else on the property during those times except for maybe one employee and Mike. And I would come between 3 o'clock in the afternoon, sometimes 7 a.m., sometimes 8 a.m., 9 a.m. I was working from home during this time. It was COVID. But your job never went, your company never went work from home because type of job it is.
Right.
with-
You can't mow from home?
With
I
the
wish.
employees.
I wish.
So, just to kind of give a little context of, I was in and out of this site a lot, during that time because we were taking the boat out quite a bit, and hardly ever saw anyone there. Generally speaking, part of this time was during the road reconstruction on 117th and West French Lake Road, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
it started right about your driveway, and
Right.
besides behind the red barn is what it's described as, or the red garage. Besides that, the property was always kept in pretty neat and orderly fashion. That was the spot where you could tell they were loading and unloading stuff from the day before, and it was always changed, but it was never, I wouldn't call it a mess, it was just never organized. If that's a
Sure.
fair assessment.
Yeah.
I'm trying to help give a little more,
Can I add a few comments?
yeah.
So if if you drove past my house today and you didn't know I ran a business from it, you wouldn't know. The road got dropped, I want to say about 10 feet with the new construction. And prior to that, everything was pretty well hidden. My house compared to the barn they're not close, but close enough that you just wouldn't know. I'd also like to add, one of the comments in the packet that I got from John made mention that I would be better suited in an industrial park. And I just would ask you guys to consider what's being built around me, which is an industrial park. We have an empty 1 million square foot building across the street, another 375,000 square foot building to the west that's empty. MTL is going up across from the horse barn. My neighbor, Dave, who sold his land a couple years ago, I believe they've got a plan for development. If I was next to a 40, a back 40 going up with residential homes, I would raise the white flag and absolutely understand the reason I'm here. But I don't live close to, I live close, but within a, Brayburn Trails is actually one of my clients, and they're exactly a 1.1 mile away. That's the closest residential building to me. So whoever filed this complaint, it makes sense, but it doesn't. I'm basically in an industrial park.
I wanted to also clarify one thing in the application and then ask you a little bit more about clients, because
Yeah,
Brayburn Trails, I didn't know about that.
sure.
The application says you purchased in 2022, but that's not correct.
I believe it was 2019.
So just wanted to clarify that he's been here for 5 years running the business, not just 2. And then you primarily service HOAs? Or-
HOAs and industrial buildings.
Yeah, so do you have an idea of how many clients in the city of Dayton you service?
Brayburn is our only, I believe they're our only client in Dayton.
Okay. I was
Yeah.
just curious on
Yep.
that, just knowing what you do, knowing we're building a lot of communities that are HOA.
Sure.
Seems to, or big industrial office warehouse type
Yeah.
things that need your type of service, so.
Sure.
My only concern has to do kind of more on the environmental side of things. If you're storing fuel there, salt, and probably maintaining equipment. If you're in an industrial park or business park, you're usually on an impervious surface, and therefore you have some protection. You are not. So what steps are you taking to ensure, that the air and soil and water are all protected from the business?
Sure. I guess, to be honest, I don't know that we're taking steps at this point. When Beaudry Oil is our fuel supplier, and they had to check something, I don't know if it was zoning or what, but there was a chance they couldn't bring us fuel because of maybe we were too close to a development or whatever. We don't even do oil changes in-house. That's all done at Midas or, Steve's Auto or whatever. The oil is an industrial, they're 500-gallon tanks. Do we spill? Probably, but I don't think it would be enough to be concerned about. The salt is stored in the container, and that would be maybe the biggest concern is the salt damaging the trees around me, which if it is, I'm happy to replace.
Like I said, that was my main concern.
Yeah.
You had mentioned that you're basically an industrial park and everybody around you is industrial. But what about your neighbors? I think both neighbors on each side and maybe even further to the east, they're residential, right?
Yeah, and I say that in the sense of, no one on my street enjoys what's being developed. And I probably was the only one that, not that anyone could put up a fight because the city wasn't going to change what was going on. I didn't have an issue with it because hopefully I have a payday coming, given the road that is basically striped to go right over my house. So what, you could consider this temporary in a sense, because at some point I will be bought out. To answer your question specifically, correct, I'm not in an industrial park, but it sure feels like one. I have called the cops 3 times this winter based on suspicious activity on the building across the street. And of course, they're thankful for that. And twice they've come to my house, knocked on my door, wanted to know if I had any better, description of what I saw. And their exact words to me, well, we are relying on you to call this in when you see it. And I've got no problem with that. But I shouldn't have to. And that probably doesn't carry any weight with you, except for the fact that the city is asking me to help them. But no, I don't live in an industrial park, but as soon as Dave develops his land, it certainly will, I have to look at one, at least.
Sure.
I think future zoning is that through here, right?
Yeah, so this property is guided for I'm going to call it medium density residential. When you're referring to your neighbor Dave, you're talking about the Dave across the street.
To the south.
To the
Yeah.
south, okay.
Yeah.
It gets guided for medium density residential?
On the
Mike's
north
property
side of
is
117
north of
it is.
117.
Yeah.
South is
Industrial is what it's
industrial,
guided as.
yeah.
I guess I'm trying to relate it more to the conversation we had at the last meeting where we're talking about the road alignment of future Dayton Parkway and what this area becomes in the future.
Everything's going to change.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Anyone else have anything for Mike?
No questions for him.
No, thank you.
I wanted to add one more thing, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So, being that I live in this area, I know of a lot of other businesses in the area, and I just wanted to give you the amount of businesses and the mileage away from my home. So, my neighbor Dave has been running a landscape business out of his home for 45 years. You guys probably all know who Dave Agert. My neighbor to the east has a car repair business. There's another construction company 0.4 miles from me. Another lawn and landscape business 0.9 miles from me. A city sewer and water company 0.6 miles from me. And I measured all this on my phone. Excavation business 1 mile from me. Another landscape business 1.1 miles. Koch Landscape, which maybe you guys are familiar with, 1.1 miles. There's also a very massive storage facility just to the south of here that I think you guys shut down some of it, because I had a few clients come in from them saying that they were kicked out. But he has just a massive property. That's 2.1. Master Lawn Service on Fernbrook is 2.1. And then there's a tree service 3.4 miles away. Most of these businesses are not nearly covered with trees like I am. Most of them are wide open. So that's 12 businesses. 8 of them run equipment out of their home. So I'd ask that you just consider that when you're making your decision.
Thank you. We may ask you back up, but we'll see.
Okay, so I should stay.
No, well, move into discussion here. I guess I wanted to go first with 2 different or another small business or extended home business that we did approve July 9th of 2020 at the Planning Commission. It's the address was 1748 480 107. No, that's your address.
That's that one.
The address was
What have you done here?
11 520 Hemlock Lane North. That site was 3.87 acres, and it was Paul, if you remember, it was a tree trimming, tree maintenance business over in the Elm Creek Park area. That one we allowed 6 employees on site. They were doing work on site almost all day long, from what I recall, and we did approve that one. for a IUP. So, wanted to just to note that we did have a precedence of a similar size, smaller in nature, but similar operation, maybe a little bit more on-site noise all day long than this one would have. And then we did have the IUP from the Zanzibar property that Mike had mentioned just this last fall for outdoor storage. So we do have a little bit of precedence on two different properties. One's a similar use and one's a similar extended home business. So for the two uses that you're operating here. The other thing I wanted to add, it's not as clear in the pictures as on site. All those trees right around the boat storage, and I believe a fair amount of the ones on the west are pine trees, coniferous. So all year long, you're not seeing that. When we chose this site as our boat storage, convenience was obviously a factor, but also, like Mike was saying, you can't see it from the road. You can't see it from French Lake. We checked that stuff out before we chose because we were worried about our boat from that standpoint. So wanted to put that out there as well.
I know we can't know who complained, but what was the complaint centered
the
around?
nature?
Yeah, what was the nature of the complaint?
I believe it was just that it was not appropriate for this area.
Yeah,
That seems like a bigger complaint for what's across the street. You know what I mean? Like that's what is not appropriate. It's the giant building, not someone storing boats in their yard. But
that was something I noticed too. Is I checked on Hennepin County's site, and there's no sale of homes. I mean, Mike's has got to be one of the most recent sales in the immediate vicinity of this. So it was kind of interesting that he's been operating this way for 5 years, and it's coming in now. I had something else that I was going to say.
John, just to clarify, the neighbors did not receive notification of this?
Correct.
Okay. So there's a chance they could show up at city council?
Correct.
Voice their concern if they have any?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't have any questions for the applicant, but a couple just thoughts.
Yeah.
This body's usually fairly stringent on outdoor storage, just, want to make sure it's screened and taken care of and thoughtful and being used in the right location. This particular applicant and property seems like it's about as screened as you can get, and, you use those trees that were in the middle of your property to create that buffer, and it's right centered, east to west and all the way in the back. I didn't have a chance to drive past this property, but I have previously a number of times and never realized there was anything back there. I think in this case, I'm okay with this. It's also just supporting local business. You brought up the elephant in the room. That road goes right to your doorstep. So, the small business is limited in this particular location. So, hopefully, when that time comes, you can find another property in Dayton and keep your business here. But
My wife and I, this is our second home in Dayton.
okay,
That was what I was going to add, is that road, and this is kind of goofy, and I don't know why we did this, but we have 2 lane arrows going straight into Mike's living room.
they painted it.
They're
right?
painted.
They're
They're
ready.
painted in the roadway, and
See what all those complaints get you?
Yeah, right.
so
Yeah.
Yep, that was a contractor error. They put those on there, and he did not get the hatching that was on the plan, and by the time we got him to go out there and do it, it was too cold.
Okay.
So it'll be done this spring.
Okay.
The center 2 lanes will be hatched out, so only the right and the left will be remaining.
gotcha. Okay, it was something I noticed because I haven't been by in a while. So
It's funny.
when this came up, I drove by it as well.
Yeah, I think as long as you maintain, that storage in the middle, it's not visible to the road, not visible to your neighbors. You're respectful to that time frame, 7 a.m. and not revving engines and all that stuff. And if you get neighbor complaints, the city council might hear something that we don't, and then that might sway decisions. But I don't see a reason not to approve this one.
Nick, you got anything to add?
No, I struggle with it a little bit, right? Because we're not zoned for this in this area yet, right? And I think yet is probably the prime word for it. In that, I think interim use permit. That sounds like it makes a lot of sense in this area because this area is going to change. It's an area in transition, which explains what's going on across the street to the south and why it kind of feels like it would fit here. I think 5-10 years ago, it probably wouldn't feel as much like that, like it would fit there. So from that standpoint, the interim use permit part of it seems to make sense. I think something for us to consider as we potentially consider making a recommendation on this is, well, how long is that interim use going to be there, right? How long until the end game is seen here that this area does rezone and look to completely change in character because the neighbors are residential. Looking to the north, there's certainly some outdoor storage, commercial-ish, industrial-ish activity potentially occurring to the north. So it's kind of already quasi going that direction. I'd be interested to hear the way the rest of the board feels and whether or not a motion comes about. The one thing I did note is the staff report noted that screening was provided. I think specifically on the east side, the screening is provided by the adjacent property. Right, there isn't any screening on this property on the east side. It's all provided by the adjacent property. If the adjacent property were to take that down, there isn't screening on the east side anymore. West side, heavily screened. I think where the storage is contained, since it is bounded by trees, I think it's pretty well screened there. But that was one thing that I noted during staff's presentation was that screening is provided by the adjacent property. Those are kind of my comments.
A question I would have is, if another person comes in with the same zoning and wants to do this, but they are completely surrounded and don't have the industrial park to the south, would our answer be the same? And I'm not saying it has to be, but I think we need to be clear and perhaps long-term, like, does there need to be some sort of medium, like some middle ground that because we're always going to have these awkward transitions when you go, particularly from industrial to residential. Commercial to residential isn't quite so stark, but when you go from industrial to residential, that feels really awkward. And this feels more appropriate because you are across the street from an industrial park. But if you were across the street from a subdivision, it wouldn't feel, even though your zoning might be the same. And so, not that that's necessarily something that has to be decided now, but I think we need to be able to clarify if someone else came who was surrounded by residential, and we would maybe be leaning more towards no for that person. But on paper, their zoning is identical. So how do we justify that?
So I would say every project is very unique, but
Okay.
you do need to consider. If this still is a residential area, even though right across the street is industrial, but it is very unique to the rest of Dayton. Not everyone has a 1 million square foot warehouse as a neighbor.
Very few.
Very few, yeah.
Thankfully.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, I'm candidly looking at aerials. I didn't pay this close of attention to the houses nearby from the storage standpoint. If every one of these neighbors around there has 10 boats, which in the aerials is that way, the outdoor storage is not that piece of it is no problem. It's, I would agree maybe the screening around the building needs to be cleaned up a little bit. And, there are other outdoor storage places nearby that back up to residential areas. I'm not going to call them out because I know who they are and don't use them, but I know of them, and
Some could use some better screening.
yes, they could use this property as an example.
As an example of appropriate screening
So-
for your neighbors. Again, my concern is back to the environmental.
Yep.
So anything, knowing that you don't do the maintenance on site helps, as long as we can have some guarantee and assurance about the salt, because that can be devastating to the plants around it. That would be the only concern I have. So whether that gets moved onto a pad of some sort or into the structure, that would be my only concern.
Are you guys certified MPCA Smart Salt?
No, but that's probably coming for anyone in my business. I think New York right now requires it, many states on the East Coast. A lot of companies are moving to liquid, which
Yep.
we are dabbling in and have been for about 3 or 4 years. But I do not have a certificate, no.
I think, for me too, on that east side of the property line, some of that outdoor storage gets really close to the property line that's not really screened by that property. If I were to support this, I'd probably say I'd want to see some of that stuff moved off. If you look at the current aerial, there's some stuff stored up right onto that line, real tight. And I would imagine outdoor storage does have a setback.
Yeah, so in this case, for a home business, it's 100 feet from a neighboring resident. So in this case, it is 100 feet.
Probably meets it.
But, generally speaking, I think if driveways have to be a setback 5 feet,
Okay.
which is still small.
We do have, so if you look at the map here, where it actually has my physical address listed, yep, that area to the south there is pretty much open, and we certainly could move.
Just move it on over.
Everything on the line can be moved over.
Scoot over.
And I would be happy to put up trees if I needed to keep the neighbor happy, obviously at my expense.
I would imagine the damage to the fence might have came from potentially storing stuff right tight to the fence and
Yeah.
and whatnot. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that would help.
Interim use permit. To your point earlier about how we deal with these transitions, I think Nick or Paul, one of these, said exactly that. Interim use permit helps with that. Do we have a timeline or something that we want to tie to it?
Staff report suggested 5 years. I felt that kind of would be appropriate, and correct me if I'm wrong, but then the applicant would just have to come back in to request an extension or to
Correct.
request a new interim use permit. Planning commission and then council could at that point kind of assess how things are going. Is 5 years potentially too long for us to figure this out? You've been operating this way since, would you say?
I believe we bought in 19, and the house was purchased for the purpose of expanding the business, which was quite small at the time.
So we have an opportunity to maybe kind of provide some changes to how the site is used and operated, get some of that stuff off the edge of the property line, focus on the environment, and maybe revisit is, I think, the question for, to me, it sounds like there's at least, I won't speak for you guys, but there sounds like there's some support here. So maybe I wonder if the discussion up here is now about time.
I think that's where I'm leaning.
And in that regards, would a fence make more sense than trees? Just because if it's only for 5 years, they're not going to get very big. But if it's for 5 years, a fence, and also maybe, whether I don't know, fences aren't very reusable, but trees are definitely not reusable. So.
Yeah, is 3 better than 5? Is 5 okay? I think that, based on what I'm hearing from the rest of the board here, it feels like that's where the discussion might be going.
Right now, I'm fine with 5, knowing that, we have plans for Dehn Parkway to extend at some point. I'm actually fine with no timeline on it because of that piece of it, and that's going to be the driver more than anything else. I think south of here, it's industrial park, right? Mm-hmm. North of here, north of 117th, we have medium density residential. I think that's something we need to revisit in the next comp plan. That doesn't seem to fit or make sense. To your point earlier, why are we putting residential right next to industrial? And so both of the, there's a whole lot of things that we need to figure out with this that maybe 5 is okay, but
yeah, I think there has to be some time limit, though, just the whole point of the interim use, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't go less than 5.
okay.
And then any maybe restrictions on the size of the company, I'm sure you want to grow the company, right? I mean, that's everybody's goal is to do bigger and better, right? But we don't want to see 100 employees at this site.
Right. To be honest with you, I don't know that I want to get bigger. I've been a little bigger, and last winter was an absolute nightmare with the amount of snow we got, the amount of equipment that went down, the amount of employees we needed, the people that didn't show up. I believe I told John I'm actually looking to downsize right now because I can probably make the same amount of money with less headache.
Bigger is not always better.
Absolutely not.
Would we be allowed to condition the interim use permit on number of employees?
Yes.
Yeah. Something to consider. If, you know, if the potential concern is it getting much bigger, it runs with the land, not with the property owner,
Right.
right?
So as an interim use permit, it can be restricted to the property owner.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we make that an easy condition on this one, just to restrict it to you on,
IUPs are.
they're restricted to the property owner,
By nature,
applicant.
already.
to the applicant, okay. I believe if I read it correctly, you have 16 employees with your contract or seasonal,
So like right now we have 4,
yeah,
and we probably, this year probably won't exceed, I would say 8 or 9. Because we are trying to downsize.
so,
Is it 9 total or 4 plus 9?
It would be 4, it would be 4 plus 5. So
Okay.
I'll have probably 2 guys starting mid-April because the grass will turn green. And then our landscape crew will kick in, and that will not be more than 3. So I would say at max, there will be 8 employees plus myself.
15 seems reasonable.
yeah,
I mean,
I mean,
yeah.
that's
It
kind
doesn't,
of where it
doesn't
was in the
materially
staff
change
report.
the way it's going to get used.
Right.
20 might, maybe.
And at that point, I'm probably looking for,
A new location.
Right.
and
And
I
that's-
talked about this a year ago. We're probably getting too big for the property. And then I was like, no, I'll stay smaller.
And that's kind of the idea of the interim use permit, right? They're,
It's to help
they might outgrow it, or a
Yeah. Yeah.
home extended business.
Yeah.
They're going to outgrow it. Or if they don't, then they remain that way. But, okay.
Do you want to entertain a motion?
Do you want to entertain a motion?
Do you want to make a motion?
If I could add, so within the packet, there is a draft resolution that does have 4 conditions of its approval. If I could just read these off. So, 1 is the applicant shall remove the shipping container from the property within 60 days. So the city code does not allow shipping containers to be used as permanent storage or permanent structures. Item 2, the applicant shall sufficiently screen outdoor storage from view of the street and neighboring properties within 60 days. Screening shall consist of a 6-foot privacy fence and/or a row of 6-foot coniferous trees. 3, employee parking shall be located in the backyard. So currently it's still part of the backyard, but the intention is behind. I'm going to say behind the barn or otherwise screened. So that is one thing that you can tell from the street. 4, the interim use permit shall expire and the home extended business shall cease in 5 years. And then I've got number 5 is a maximum of 15 employees reporting to the site.
I did come up with that myself.
Oh,
Good job. Great minds
Do-
think alike.
Can we change, can we just add the 3 to 5, the 5 to 3? I mean, his operation.
For the
his
year
operation,
expiration.
it's more about, your employees aren't on site when you have 15.
Right.
So let's just add it as 15, no, the employee parking, just add it together if guys have to carpool and park somewhere else.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Okay, I have to word that somehow.
Or just,
So-
add it as 5. Just add it as 5. Just leave it as 5.
Can you expand on that a little bit? What are you talking
Never mind.
about? You lost me a little bit there.
I was just saying that the number of employees actually doesn't really matter because they're not on site.
Sure.
Oh,
So just make it the parking
Limit
for the
number
employees
of-
on site.
Okay.
Because I'm assuming with your landscaping crews where you tend to have a little bit more, they're taking a work truck, there's 2 of them in there.
Yep.
I guess where I come from in the employees is more employees, more equipment, more fuel, more
Yeah.
everything else.
Okay.
Right? More everything.
Okay.
Supplies. They may not actually physically show up to the site. They might show up to the place that they're doing the work,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah, that's fine.
Mike, are you comfortable with 15?
Yeah, I don't foresee us ever having that many, but yeah.
And they could come in and say he did want to have 20 to amend it or get a different one, right? He's not
Yeah.
locked in.
Sure.
He would have to get an approval to then exceed that if specifically they wanted to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And are we talking 15 full-time
Just
15
15
total.
people.
total? Okay.
Doesn't matter their status.
Yep. Got it.
And if you did want to exceed that, you'd just have to come back.
Yep. Yeah.
Seem reasonable?
Yeah, I mean, there's times where we do have shovelers that are on site for 10 minutes. I mean, this year it was 3 times because we only shoveled 3 times. But we typically have, 15 shovelers out. So, for maybe a half hour in the winter, I might exceed the 15, but it's, I mean, yeah.
That's not on record. I didn't
Yeah, I was going to
say
say, is that on record?
that. It is not absolutely
right.
on record.
Can I entertain a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve based on the 4 written resolutions plus the 5th one, limiting the employee count to 15 on site.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Good luck at city council.
Yep, so again, city council will hold, similar conversation, will
Yeah.
hold the public hearing Tuesday, April 23rd, 6:30 PM at City Hall.
Okay. And this is not City Hall?
This is,
This is-
City
Okay.
Hall, yeah,
So here.
Come right back
Yes.
here.
Okay.
yep,
Same hot seat.
All right, so I'm good?
you're good.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
All right, moving along. I believe it's 7B.
Yeah, how are we doing on time? 7:23. I like to keep track of this. We're close. So this is Dean's Pumpkins. It's located at 17270 125th Avenue North. They're requesting an interim use permit for an event center. So I'm going to make an assumption that the Plan Commission is all familiar with Dean's Pumpkins. They've been in business for many years. As the Commission might recall, last year we had, I believe it was last year, we had a somewhat similar IEP for an event center for a business that was operating, without a permit. That kind of raised a trigger of the question of what other event centers do we have in Dayton. There's more than one. So staff had reached out to other known event centers and said, you need to get a permit. So that's why we're here tonight for Dean's Pumpkins. So Dean's, I'm just going to say generically, is located at the sharp corner of 125th and East French Lake Road. They have between the Dean family roughly about 700 acres that are owned. This IUP is limited to about half of that, or 300 acres. I will say it is about the most remote area that we have in Dayton. Close. It's
Not fair because you're not the most
Well,
remote,
because
or
I'm,
because
well, yes, because I want the most remote location, but also I'm right there, so we're not that remote.
So Dean's Pumpkin, what we asked Dean's to come back with is to list every type of event that you could possibly imagine being there, whether they operate or not is another item. So it's much easier to get permission or to have everything and then kind of work backwards. If something doesn't work out, and we don't necessarily have to use that event. So the different types of events that are listed is there's a corn maze, hay rides, a haunted attraction, concerts, ice castles. So the ice castles refer to this previous year was what was held in Maple Grove. We have Christmas tree sales, birthday parties, and corn pit, and this is held in, it doesn't, well, I'll get to the next slide, in an existing agricultural building, or barn, I'll call it. Weddings and receptions, Easter activities, and motocross. So, and I'm going to let the applicant kind of describe what activities would occur where. So, again, this is, it's a large area. Yes, and otherwise we have half the family here, I'm going to say.
I would imagine not.
Name and address?
Right. Bruce Dehn, 18351 South Diamond Lake Road, Dayton.
Kyle Dehn, 11371 East French Lake Road, Dayton. Yeah, so obviously you get, I'm assuming most of you guys have been to our farm. Obviously we have the fall activities that is our main attraction. There is a few things that we've had ideas about that we haven't obviously pursued, but obviously wanted to get permission for future use potentially. Yeah, anything to add, Bruce?
Well, I was gonna see if what they had to ask us, I guess.
Bruce and Kyle, if you could point to the screen, what is occurring where?
So, hey, can you blow it up at all, or?
No, this is just you'll
The
have
dirt
to-
bike track, obviously, you can see right there. That would be potentially, a 1 day a week, 1 o'clock to 7 o'clock, potentially maybe a Saturday, over this, a couple Saturdays over the summer.
Just recreation, no sanctioned race.
Yeah, just be a practice. I mean, it's, right now certain times out the year we've had 20 people of family and friends out there, and it's been there for 20 years. Hay rides, it starts at the farm and goes around the dirt bike track and comes back up.
Kind of see the path going around there.
The haunted attraction, we're thinking it'd be in the north east corner, right up in there. There's a few slides for that, for some information. Concerts, we're thinking about not talking about that or just canceling it, not doing, cross it off the list basically. Ice castles, up in the parking lot or up by the building would be, where we do pumpkin stuff, right up in there so we can park cars where we normally park. That came about because Kyle had got a call from the people that did it in Maple Grove last year. They wanted to set up and use our facility for it. We told them we we sell pumpkins, and
They need a certain
They-
amount of gallons per minute for water, and their setup time would interfere with our fall stuff, farming and everything else, so it didn't really work out. But,
in the event, I guess, where it's past that. But Christmas trees, potentially, maybe selling trees, birthday parties, and, all that stuff's in the fall. Weddings, have a lot of people want weddings out there. They come for the pumpkin patch. Can I have a wedding out here? Well, we're not a, event. We don't, we're not advertising, you know what I mean? We're not, the city doesn't allow that, basically. So we just say no, as of right now, potentially. Easter activities, kind of the spring babies, if you're familiar with Twin Cities Maze, could have a couple weekends of opening the corn pit in the spring or May or whatever to do that stuff. And yeah, the motocross track is already back there.
My only, I have no problem with any of it. The only thing kind of sort of is that the event center thing that we approved, you guys approved, I wasn't on the time. I was out there being pissy about it at the time. Now I'm on this side of the table. But we have a time limit on Friday and Saturday of 11 p.m. and then 10 p.m. during the rest of the week. And the Dean's at Dark proposal had evening operation till 11:30 p.m. Would you have an issue bringing that back to 11 to fall in line, or does it have to be, is that critical to the business itself, or is that a non-issue?
Probably a non-issue.
Okay.
I mean, say you'd close at 11, but you'd you'd maybe have a few stragglers.
Well, that was kind of, I think that was, as the person in the audience, that was my push to move it up. I'm like, because if you say midnight,
Yeah.
no one's getting out at there at midnight. You're going to be pushing 12:31 by the time, and as the neighbor to this supposed event center, didn't really want all that traffic at that late at night. So that would be my only, that's the only thing on here that caught my attention at all, was that one.
Yeah, but we've done the flashlight maze, and what we found out is 9 o'clock, no one else is really coming. Everyone else is, there, they either mess around or not, they're not doing things they should be doing, so we would want to close.
A little sooner,
at
anyway.
least.
Okay.
The two questions I have, or the question I have, obviously the dirt bike track's up in the upper left of the picture, and you said the haunted attraction upper right in kind of that grove of trees there. Besides those two and maze or wagon rides, all the other activities are kind of centered around the farm itself.
Yeah, pretty much, yep.
I mean, abutting 125th and French Lake, right in that.
Yeah, yep. Them
Okay.
two items are up in the corners there. The haunted attraction, people would park where everybody else parks normally, and then we would wagon them
Yep.
back there and then wagon them back to the parking lot. That was the thought for that, anyways.
I mean, I would imagine that the reason I ask this, right, is I'm imagining more the concerts. You're not going to have a concert out. If you even wanted it a concert, then you wouldn't want it out in the middle of the field, and then people walking back. Kind of Sarah's point that we're done at 11:30, but it might take someone a half hour to walk back. Or,
Yeah, and it was a thought. Did we want to have a little something and have it by the shed or the buildings? And
Yeah.
it's just, but
More like a Magnus size event.
Yeah,
Not
one off.
5,000
Yeah.
person.
They get special for the big events with the amplified music, right? Because that was the other concern, was amplified music late at night, because your neighbors. But they get a special. Oh yeah, because the actual says no sound amplifications after 8 p.m. outdoors. Indoors is fine, but in an outdoor, But Magnus gets their special permit.
Magnus
for
will
this.
be applying for this same
Okay.
type of permit.
Okay.
So if we had a concert in the shed,
Then
then
do whatever. That's fine. It's just the outdoor sound amplification has to end by 8 p.m. because that travels so far for your neighbors. And not that I have little kids, but some of my neighbors have little kids, and they would like them to go to bed.
And so I mentioned earlier that this is a remote place, so the nearest home that it's not owned by one of the deans is about 1,000 feet.
From property line or
From, not sure, Leo, if it's from,
1,300, quarter mile, 80 is half a mile long and a quarter mile wide, or
okay.
1320 by.
So a quarter mile from your house or a quarter mile from the nearest activity, from the,
Quarter mile, it'd be a half a mile from the haunted track, the
Sure.
haunted place in the woods.
so
Roughly half a mile.
okay. And Leo, you're not getting picked up from the microphone, so it's roughly half mile from the wooded area and a quarter mile from
The house on the road.
from your house here.
East.
East, right there.
Okay, and this, you own this house,
Probably
the boys,
East.
yeah,
Probably talking the next property down.
to the south,
Cook's.
off the map.
Yeah.
Sound
a long ways.
amplification just travels though, because
Yep.
I'm not quite a mile from Magnus, and I can hear I could sing along if I was so inclined. So, which I am not.
Have you? Oh, I was gonna say, have you?
What?
Have you?
No, I'm a curmudgeon. As my husband says, I don't enjoy fun, so I mostly just whine the entire while. So. I don't know if we've officially met. I'm on the corner of Zanzibar. Yeah. I mean, as long as you're it doesn't look like, other than that 1:11, bringing that time up to the 11 p.m., that's the only thing that doesn't match the current code for event center. So other than that, I have no issue with any of this, personally.
Yeah, from my standpoint, this area brings the community together. Primarily, if we can do it within the right timeframes and make sure we're being respectful to neighbors, which I think is the whole point of this IUP. It seems great. The only thing that was a little bit alarming to me is it says that it could operate 365 days. There's not a lot of businesses that operate 365 days a year. I don't know that I'm ready to say a number less than that. I know that this use probably will not get used like that 365 days a year. But I thought that was a little bit alarming in the specific IUP
I think that.
condition.
If we did the ice castles,
Sure.
that would be the only thing that would potentially be in the winter time.
It's every day. Yeah, it's every day while they're open, while they can be open.
Yeah, yep, and that would be the only thing that we could run in the winter.
Yeah.
But otherwise it'd be
Weather willing.
more seasonal, weather dependent.
Yeah,
Well, that'd be a cool thing to have in our city.
it would be.
I guess the one other thing is just, and I don't know the neighbors, and I don't know your relationship to them, but the dirt bike track is kind of right on the edge of your property, and technically it's the liens, and I don't know, I'm not here long enough to know the relationship. They own that weird L, almost J-shaped property. If they expressed concerns, that would be the only, but I mean, yeah. But that would be my only other, if they, because it's right by their property, if they were salty about it, then that would maybe, but if they're not here and have no concerns.
Not an issue.
Okay, yeah. If they were to sell it and the people who bought it had a concern, would that be something that we could come back and have a conversation?
Yeah, so again, this is an interim use permit. It's meant to have some type of a sunset date. So,
Okay.
or sunset date. So it's either, you can say it's, if it's tied to the property owner, or it expires, when the property is sold at a certain date or a certain event. So, similar to the last project is, eventually development is going to come. This might be appropriate today, it might not be appropriate in the future.
50, 60 years from now?
It might be.
Do we give a time limit on the apple orchard?
I'm sorry?
Do we have a time limit on the apple orchard IUP?
No?
Do we?
I don't know. There should be as an interim use permit. And this is Fisher Farm, so I don't remember what that was. I don't know, Dennis.
I don't remember either. In fact, I'm trying to remember even if it was an IUP.
It was, so it
was,
was the
okay.
same permit. And I know, like with Fisher Farms, they had, I'm gonna call it a short-term and a long-term plan, so.
And I think we only approved the IUP for the short term.
we-
I don't think we have
Not for
anything
the
in the
building.
long, because they don't have permanent structures yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. They had to come back for the permanent structure.
Yeah.
So it might have been like a 2 or I
Yeah.
don't
They had 3 phases.
know. Was it? Okay.
As far as we have in here 5 years for the IUP.
We want to bump that up, like Lawn Smart, basically, no limit, or 20 years, or, we don't, our location, I don't see us
Did
doing
Lawns?
it.
I thought Lawns.
We did
We-
five.
we
We did 5.
Oh, you did?
I was
okay.
proposing long,
Oh.
just because of the plan for the road.
Right.
Here, I would think the only thing that I would want to put a time limit on, that the only thing I have concern about is the motocross from a time limit, just to Sarah's point, if it's not working well with the neighbors, or from that standpoint, that's the only thing I would want to really constrict. I mean, I've been coming to Dean's longer than I've been a Dayton resident for
You
pumpkins,
didn't
so.
disclose that.
Should I disclose that I want no development in this area?
I mean,
I think,
Coming there.
If there was a concern of any of the items, can somebody come in and you can?
It is, so
change it?
with any interim use permit or conditional use permit, if there's a violation of that permit, or there's some other, I'm gonna call it a nuisance factor, that can always be reconsidered by the Planning Commission, City Council, either for an amendment or revocation. So, let's say you put in a sunset date of 100 years or whatever it is, it might come back before you next year if there's some kind of a concern about noise or traffic.
I guess I would only caution on that then, I mean, of all the attractions up there and what you guys are known for, and I mean, I know people ride dirt bikes in the city because I can hear them from my house. It's just more of a, is that going to take away the IUP and not get it back on your other operations? That'd be the concern I would have.
Sure. So this is one permit for
For all
every
of it.
activities.
Yes.
It's not multiple
Right.
permits.
You're saying of using the motocross stuff, and then.
If
becomes
that
an issue.
if that becomes an issue, yeah, just I would only caution. Just
Yeah, I wouldn't be concerned about that, you know, obviously, the motocross,
If we did,
everyone is, you know, there's not people riding up and down the road.
You know, there's a wetland there in between where this track is and lanes. There's a significant wetland there
Yeah.
anyways, so.
I mean, if we
And-
did, if
and
there was any
you own the next one? or-
issues or nuisance
I
with
was thinking about.
the track, I mean, that'd be the first thing we would cross off so we could still have an IUP. I
yeah,
mean,
and that's where I don't know if it's trying to be creative with two separate IUPs or something. I don't know if it's worthwhile or not.
We,
But-
I don't think it is
it's
at this
something we
point.
threw on there. I mean, we're still looking at insurance, so it's just,
Oh,
you know, there's a lot of variables with pursuing that even.
We don't want to stop them from being the premier motocross track in the upper Midwest. Bringing people to our city.
Rochester has that already.
Do they?
What's
All right,
what's the
let's
one
fight
down
with
near
Rochester.
Cannon Falls?
Well, there's the one up in Elk River too.
That's Spring
Yeah.
Creek, Spring
Yeah.
Creek.
Yeah.
Can I send the guy that was riding around the ball fields after the snowfall over you guys? Have him right there. Yeah. Yeah. Get him off our ball fields.
did you get busted?
No.
I mean, if we're gonna put a timeline, I'd say like 20 years. Like they're an upstanding business that's been here forever, and they run a good business. I don't see any reason to hamstring them. But we're just with Dayton Parkway coming through, maybe in that time frame, maybe at that point it's a good time to reevaluate. But again, if there's complaints, then it comes to us anyway. So like, I don't know if I'd go any less than that on this particular use, and for where they are and where they are in the development sequence phasing. You know,
Seems appropriate.
this area is pretty far out there, so.
30 years?
Is this the 2050 area?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
In 2000, it was 2020 was gonna be fully developed.
Yeah.
I've been here.
30 would put us at the 2050. I'd be okay with 30.
Yeah.
Nick?
The head nodding was a
Any,
Head nodding's good.
It's-
Anything to
Yeah.
add?
It's hard to hear the
If
head
you haven't
nodding.
learned from me yet, if I object, I will
All right.
speak.
All right.
Thank you, though.
any other conditions that we want to consider? I mean,
Just the 11 p.m.?
Yeah.
As long
Yeah.
as it's the 11
Okay.
p.m., then I had no other concerns.
make a motion to approve based on the time change. Oh, you got something else, John?
Well, there's a question and then a comment. So the time change, so within the packet, there's a draft resolution that has a number of conditions.
Yeah, I'm reading through those right now. One thing we haven't considered, like overnight camping and whatnot.
Yeah,
but
so-
it's prohibited.
Okay, yeah.
If
So
I
good
could
things.
read these off, and then if
Mm-hmm.
there's something you would like to change for the motioner, I'll wait till there's a second, though.
So we have a motion.
Yeah. Yeah,
Do we have
motion-
a second?
Second?
All right.
Okay.
Motion includes the 30-year timeframe.
Okay. So the recommended conditions of approval. So item 1, hours of operation shall be Sunday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m., and Friday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. The event center may operate daily, 365 days a year. So Sarah, there was, I'm not sure what the 11 o'clock was.
Oh, it was in in their proposed ideas. There was the Dean's at night, Dean's at dark, and it said evening operation hours 7 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. So
Oh, I see. So-
that was, but that wasn't in our resolution. It was in what they
Okay,
proposed.
so no change to the 11 o'clock.
Yeah. So I guess I was just letting them know that
Sure. Start on the-
as long as it was 11, I was cool with it. So
Okay. My numbering that I'm reading off is a little, I misnumbered the actual staff report. Condition number 2, prior to indoor operations, buildings shall be made compliant with building, fire, and health codes Each building used for the event center shall be posted with a maximum capacity and shall not exceed this capacity. When I say capacity, it's really occupancy. So the buildings that are used for the event center were built as agricultural buildings. Once there's customers there, they then become a commercial building. So it doesn't meet the code for commercial, it does for agricultural. So there are some modifications that will be needed prior to using the buildings for events. Condition 3, prior to operations, the applicant shall submit an emergency operations plan to the city for administrative approval. The plan shall address responses to fire, weather conditions, medical emergencies, power failure, bomb threats, active shooter, and other emergencies. Event capacity shall be based on the applicant's ability to effectively manage events based on weather and site conditions and staffing. Public safety agencies may limit or close events based on weather and site conditions and the applicant's ability to manage event participants. All event center activities shall be accessible by emergency services. Accessibility shall be at the discretion of the police chief, fire chief, and building official. So just to clarify in this is you have a lot going on in your property, and for everyone that's on your property, they become your responsibility to manage. So, I'm thinking of, from the city's safety standpoint of, how do you manage all these people if something bad goes on? And what we're saying is that's really your job to figure it out and for us to, accept it. Item 4, the structures and site improvements shall be compliant with the city code and public health requirements. Item 5, the applicant shall control nuisances such as picking up litter daily during events, removing refuse when full, providing an adequate number of portable toilets based on event attendance, directing traffic such that there is minimum congestion on 125th Avenue and East French Lake Road. Noise shall not exceed MPCA requirements measured at residences. And so when I'm referring to residences, these would be the neighboring residences that are neighboring to the Deans or the Dean family.
And just to clarify on that, we have like the property on, it'd be on the right side of the screen, listed as part of this IUP.
Correct.
So it's the next property over.
That is also part of the Deans.
Well, but the next residence over, that's not part of the IUP.
Well, what if that house sells?
Then that would change the IUP.
If this one sells.
If this one sells, it changes the IUP.
Correct. This.
Yeah.
Understood.
I guess I just don't want to specifically tie it to that address and potentially tie it to ownership of the family, right? Because if that sells,
so the IUP is tied to the applicant, and so if it sells,
It's gone anyway.
it's gone, and they would have to get a new IUP because the IUP has
all of those properties listed in the application.
It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 PIDs.
Okay.
And so I just wanted to make sure that it's not the ones on here that we're worried about the residents' MPCA noise. It's the ones beyond.
Yes, and
just for clarification.
So for MPCA, and I'm going to use Sarah's example, is if you have the outdoor concerts, people are going to hear it. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a violation of MPCA requirements. So
we can just be whiny about it, but we can't do anything about it.
Right. Where I live, far away, I can hear Highway 10. And it's, I don't know how far it is, but 10 miles maybe. And the train.
Yeah, and the train.
Yep. Okay. Item 6, temporary signs are prohibited from the right-of-way, excluding traffic control signs. Off-premise signs are prohibited, excluding properties owned by the Dean Heritage Farms, in Leo and Diane Dean, and James and Bernadette Dean. So to clarify for this, so I know you guys have had signs all over the place. The city did adopt a ordinance, can't remember if it was late last year or early this year, that does prohibit off-premise signs.
Which is being completely ignored.
In the road right away.
In the right of way.
In the road right away.
In the road right away, but it also, so an off-premise sign is a sign that's advertising something that's not on the business's property. So, so this is a big item for you, so.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But it can be in the private property?
On your property, not
Only
somebody
on-
else's, yes.
How about county road?
It's never been allowed on the county road.
The county seems like they haven't had a problem for 20 years.
The county hasn't enforced it for, yes,
It's state statute, actually.
yes.
Yeah,
If it's
it's
similar
not allowed
to-
on anywhere. It's
We have
state
signs
statute.
similar to realtor signs, or is it a realtor sign allowed?
In
They're
the,
not
All
supposed to be there
No.
either.
Okay.
One of these days I'm gonna go pull them out of my corner, but
there are, I don't have Marty here. There are a number of signs I've noticed that were pulled within the last week or two. There's some new signs back again, but that's,
Just a question on this one. Being the use and knowing the property where you get in and out of your parking lots, there's a big ditch there, and it's hard to see where that entrance may be if there's not a whole lot of people there. Would we allow a temporary day sign out there that's pulled back every night?
there is a thing about traffic control signs
Yes.
being allowed.
Yeah,
It's directing them to where parking is, or,
that would count.
so, just trying to help clarify.
and
Stuff.
we'll work that out through the emergency operation. And emergency operations plan probably isn't the best name for it. It's more of an operations plan, but we'll work that out more administratively of, it's a difference if you have 100 vehicles versus 1,000.
I mean,
so.
there's been days where there's been 100+ vehicles
Yeah.
there, so.
Let's see, item 11, it is anticipated that the applicant will adjust event center operations from time to time. The property owner shall permit the city to inspect the properties during operating hours and at reasonable times for compliance with this IEP and the emergency operations plan. Item 12, agricultural buildings located on the farmstead at 17270 125th Avenue may be used for indoor seasonal storage. So we haven't talked about this, but this is something that you're doing and plan to continue to do. 13, overnight camping is prohibited. I'm sorry, this is actually item 9, but I had to renumber this. Item 10, or condition number 10, the applicant shall preserve heritage trees and significant trees in the north wooded area. So this is where the haunted hayride would be. As defined as healthy deciduous trees 27 inches or greater in diameter, and healthy coniferous evergreen trees greater than 50 feet in height. Significant trees are defined as healthy deciduous trees 6 inches in diameter, an existing healthy common tree measuring a minimum of 12 inches in diameter, or an existing healthy coniferous evergreen tree measuring 12 inches, 12 feet in height. So this is taken from the code. It's hard to read it verbatim. So again, the intent here is, and I'm just going to say, if, corn prices go up really well and you just want to clear cut everything, the point is that you've got to preserve the big trees. Item 11, all lane alterations and structures within the floodplain shall comply with city code. So this is in reference to, there's a portion of the motocross track that's within the 100-year floodplain. So again, the intent is not to alter the floodplain such that it floods somebody else out. And I understand everything around you is, most of the land around you is yours. But, and then item 12, the IEP shall expire in 30 years. The applicant may apply for a new IEP.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
So this is not a public hearing. We do have one person online, but I believe that was part of your group. Okay.
Josh.
Yep.
Josh, yeah. Was online, not anymore.
So this will go to the city council on the 23rd?
Tuesday, April 23rd, 6:30 PM, so it will be a public hearing. We'll have a notice that is mailed out to property owners within 500 feet. You know,
Are
again,
there any other property owners within 500 feet? Okay.
less than 10, I know. Yeah.
So it could be a big crowd,
Yep,
is what I'm saying.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
They don't want to stay to talk about garages?
It's 8 o'clock, I think you said 8:30.
I said 8:30.
We're right on schedule.
All right, is this, what item is it?
No. It's item 9C
9C.
and D. I don't know if they're combined.
C and D.
Garage size and
C and
aprons.
D, are they combined, John? or-
They are, well, I'm gonna combine them well, I'm gonna go off the agenda. So they're separate. On the PowerPoint, I've got them,
Let's,
I think they're gonna run into each
Let's-
other as the same,
let's
but
discuss
it's
them
easier
together.
separate.
let's discuss them together, and if they
Okay.
need to be separate motions, they can be.
All right, so I've got a long list of items to discuss with the planning commission. The plan is to bite off the easier ones and save the harder ones for when we've got more staff time. So the easier ones are garage sizes and driveway aprons. So with garage sizes, I'll preface that there is no correct answer other than the one that you come up with. So for garages, we have a minimum size that we require, which is 440 square feet. And if I remember the math on this, it's roughly 20 by 22. So I'm going to call it a two-car garage. Although the minimum is a two-car garage, what we see being built in most single-family homes is a three-car garage. The complaint that we're hearing, and I'm going to say the complaint is probably more so, it's I'm going to say historically from the Planning Commission and the City Council, is that garages are too small. So the way that I would look at it, and I'm still going to preference, is that everyone has their own opinion, and myself included. It's not necessarily the size of the garage as it is the size of the garage stall. So the general intent is that all the homeowners' vehicles or the residents' vehicles are going to be kept in the garage, as well as storage for garbage cans and lawnmowers and snow blowers and bicycles and I'm sure, as you guys know, there's 100 things to store in here. So again, I guess my goal is really, this is more of a discussion. If you would like to recommend any kind of an amendment, please do so, and this would come back to the Planning Commission as an ordinance amendment. But really, staff's intention is really just to have an open discussion of how big of a garage should be required.
So currently, we require 440 square feet in R1 single family.
Correct.
So we require basically a very big 2-stall or a 3-stall.
Yes. So the example that's shown on here, it's in the staff report. It's bigger than 440 square feet.
Who's complaining? Where is this coming from? Residents are saying their garages are too small?
I've heard it from, I'm going to say, and I'm going to include myself in this, from my previous life of being on the Planning Commission, individuals, whether from council members and from planning commissioners.
And the builders don't care?
No, they don't.
So,
They're building spec homes.
yeah,
And if you want to buy a house right now, the only house you're buying is a spec house for the most part. There's very few new homes on the market. So if we do leave it up to the builders, they're going to build the smallest thing possible. Garbage cans are going to end up outside.
So I had talked with John a little bit earlier today on this, we had a discussion, and Paul, you may remember, we had a discussion on this at one point back in the last 3 years, for sure, on garage sizes, and I think we came to a conclusion, at that point, we came to a similar conclusion to what John was saying, is like, is it, garage size is dictated a little bit by, we've had a number of spec home builders, Lennars, D.R. Hortons, Pulte's, come in, and they have here's our menu of options, and this is what you get. I know when I built, I was one of the first ones in the Lennar neighborhood we're in, and the sales consultant didn't even understand what the 4-foot bump out was in the garage, and so we didn't get it because he didn't explain it to us. I would have gotten it.
Oh, Phil.
I would have gotten it had we had that option, and I could use it. So I get a little bit of where this is coming from. I think the biggest issue I have with this is actually, if we're gonna have homes with 3-car garages on the front, then let's make them 3-car garages on the inside. There's no way you can fit 3 full-size cars in my garage. Even if you're not doing anything but cars.
I guess a little bit I disagree, because you can. I've got a similar house to yours.
Yeah. We have the same floor plan.
I got a 23-foot boat. I've got a Tahoe, and I've got a full-size truck in there. You got to be creative, but I do have the 4-foot bump out.
You have the 4-foot bump out.
But that just allows me to fit the boat.
But where I'm
inside. Yeah, absolutely. I don't keep anything outside.
But that's where I'm getting at is where this becomes the issue is some of the homes and some of the homes in our neighborhood, the garage door, exterior garage door to the exterior wall is 6 inches.
Yeah, and you can't open your door.
And you can't open your door. Not necessarily saying if you're going to make a 3-stall garage on a house, let's make it 3 stalls usable.
3. So you may want to dictate the width based on the number of stalls.
And potentially the depth. I mean,
sure.
Right, I do. I have 3 cars in mine. I can fit 3 cars in mine. My third car is a 1950s Jeep that's 4x8. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's tiny, but it is a car. So I can fit 3 in mine, but it's not 3. And they don't need to be full set or like Suburbans or Tahoes. Mm-hmm. But, can you fit 3 decent sized cars in there? An SUV, a minivan, and a Toyota Corolla that the kid's driving, right? That's kind of where I'm looking at this. Is that feasible with the size garage we're building today? With the lifestyle that people live today too? I mean,
well, I think you live today. And so I have a serious problem making it a required minimum, because like, we do not live that lifestyle. I do not want a giant garage. I do not want to waste my impervious surface area on a garage I'm not going to use. If you tried to make me have a bigger garage, I'd be pissy as hell about it. So I have a problem saying that you want to have that many vehicles. Great, you should be able to, and you should buy a house that allows you to have that many vehicles. But you shouldn't say, because I want a 3-car garage, the minimum anyone can have is a 3-car garage.
And where I'm going with this is not, there's 2 parts to it. Part 1 is, I think where I have no preference in the, first off, in the agricultural or large acre homes that have the space to build this. Where I have the problem with is where we have these tiny lots that we're building that have no room to build a shed on, no room to build that extra space on. The suburban neighborhoods that we're building. That's where I have the problem with this. And I totally get it. And I totally get that people can use the garage the way they want to. I've got 2 neighbors on my street who have taken their 3rd stall and converted it to their mudroom, because that's how they're using it. And that's fine, whatever someone does with it after the fact. Where I'm getting at is the builders are trying to get
I'm afraid of the builders going smaller than they are
Yes.
now. I think they're probably, I wonder if there's, I don't really like that we necessarily force a 3-stall garage. So I wonder, is there a minimum square footage for a 2-stall and a minimum square footage for a 3-stall, knowing that we do want the market to control itself a little
Yep.
bit. If a builder thinks they can sell a 2-stall and they can find a buyer that wants a 2-stall, perfect. You're probably not going to find a lot of builders that want to do that, and probably not going to find a lot of buyers. But if it's there, it's there. And I think that helps to maybe encourage affordable house prices. But I think we maybe as a group decide, okay, if it's a 2-stall, this is the minimum. Because you got to be able to fit a vehicle in it. You don't want somebody to buy a house and say, well, I didn't think I couldn't park in it.
I mean, and we've
right?
had-
Or I didn't know that if I pulled in, I had 8 inches of my door open to shimmy out of it. Because to your point, my neighbor can't use his 3rd stall because the doorway opening of the 3rd stall garage is like a foot from the wall. He just can't park in it because he can't get out. So,
I'd be okay with that. A
Yeah.
2-car garage.
I don't wanna
this is
force
the
a
minimum.
3-stall.
3-car garage is this size.
And that's
And a
kind of where I was
reasonable
getting at
number.
with this is if we're gonna build these, and this more has to do with the spec homes and the large builders.
Well, it has to do with people taking advantage of other people. And you say, oh, this is a 3-star garage. You sell it as a 3-car garage when in fact it isn't. That is taking advantage of people who maybe are buying their first home and haven't really had this opportunity and don't know to ask these questions. That's not fair. If it is a 2-car garage, you should sell it for what it is. So yes, I'm down with saying this is this, and then they have to sell it as what it is. If it's a 2-car garage, it's
Yep.
a 2-car garage. Advertise it correctly.
Yep.
But we also do need more affordable housing, and that's one way to do it.
I would potentially like to table this specific topic because there is legislation potentially rolling through the state capitol right now that will completely limit our ability as a city to even opine on this whatsoever. I think,
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's the missing middle housing bill. It's through both the House and the Senate in different versions at this point. It'll probably go into committee. I don't know for sure. If it passes both House and Senate, it goes into committee and then into committee. You know, some people would say that's when reasonable things can occur and they can work out differences because each bill probably has some poison pills in it. But the missing middle right now, I think council did discuss it a little bit or potentially passed a resolution on consent supporting local control and preserving local control. It is possible that this local control is out of our hands relatively soon. But maybe if that doesn't pass, the next step for staff would be to research, well, what is a reasonable 2-stall garage size dimensions? What's a reasonable 3-stall garage size dimensions? Instead of having us come up with it on the fly up here, maybe staff can look at some plans that they've received and say, okay, you know, a lot of the 3-stall garages we're seeing are X square feet. And give us kind of a baseline to
Sure.
go from.
So I'm going to use the neighborhood that I lived in Dayton, which was more of a custom home builder. There's 2 standard garage sizes. It's where each stall is 12 feet wide, and either it's 30 feet in depth or it's 40 feet in depth.
That would be amazing.
So
That's pretty big, though.
it's big, yes.
That's
but
very
you can
big.
easily open doors. You
Yeah.
can store garbage containers along the sidewall. It's big enough to store things. So
I mean, I'm trying to pull up mine that I could measure because, just for reference, like I said, I park a 23-foot boat in it all year round, a full-size pickup truck, and a Tahoe, and I've got a fridge in it, and I've got 4 bikes, and I've got my garbage cans. I've got a toolbox. It's big enough. It really is for what I would think is average.
Yeah, and what I think that's kind of where, but you do have the 4-foot bump out.
I do.
Is not standard.
Yeah. So, and I mean that might be what our barometer is. I don't know how big that is in square footage. I'm trying to measure it.
Yeah, I think 3 points, maybe it'll be 4. I agree, doing a 2-stall and 3-stall limits, separating those so that there's the flexibility. I agree that we should make sure that the minimum stall sizes are appropriate, that people can fit their items in the garage, because even across the street in Bleasy Farms, people that have to park on their driveway, it's so short to the sidewalk that it fills up their whole driveway, and sometimes you have to walk around their vehicle on the sidewalk, because it's just, there's not enough room, right? So we want to encourage storage in the garages. And then three, I think we do need to be cognizant on how much of the garage takes up the frontage of the house. I mean, some of these developments, it is garage with a tiny little narrow house, right? And when we built our house, it was 55% was the rule, and I actually had to skinny my garage up in order to meet the requirements that I didn't have too much garage to my house. And so I lost a little garage width from what I prefer to have, and I wish I only had 1 foot from door opening to the wall, and I wish I had 2 feet like I had originally drawn, but and I think that's been removed because of all these new developments. It's not feasible to do that, but we do need to be cognizant, because these neighborhoods that are literally all garage doors, when you drive down them, is not.
And that is definitely not right. That I don't want that either.
So I mean, I think we find like
We
what's
gotta find
what's the proper size with double garage door. Mine's 18. I don't know if that's bigger or smaller than normal. And then you say another 2 feet on each side minimum or something, right? So, you know, if it's an 18-foot door, that's 22-foot wide clear is your minimum, right? So you have room to open doors and stuff like that. I mean, you know, so that maybe is the math that you do, and then we figure out what that depth is for, you know, a full-size pickup truck.
20 foot. Yeah. And actually, I think you're going right at it, is let's think about what we could put in it and how we'd use it, and then draw that box and measure that box appropriately. I misspoke earlier. I thought 440 was a 3-stall garage. 440 is not. It's a 26 by 20. So that's a 2-stall. That's the size of my 2-stall. 26 by 20, or that's 22 by 20 is 440. My garage is 760 square feet. I'd say it's big enough. Without the 4-foot bump out, it's 660. You take away my boat, it's enough. But, you know, but I think then it would, you know, if I'm looking at the plans, what you're kind of saying is give yourself 2 feet to open a door. I do on those, and it would mostly accomplish that. But yeah, be able to draw a box around what we think is useful.
Yeah.
And then go from there.
But you're still suggesting tabling because of the state's action.
I mean, the other.
I don't know that I'm ready to necessarily make a decision on it.
The other issue we're going to run into, and Nick, you're probably the most familiar with these as I am, is you get a spec builder. Here's the floor plans that Lennar's proposing to build in the new development here. They're not going to change their garage plans
Just for us.
Just for us, are they, John?
Well, you're going to know more than I will, but realistically, you know, they're going to follow what the city, if the city code requires 22-foot wide garages, they'll build it. If not, they're going to build what sells or what's economical.
What's economical? Okay, so they would come in and change
I think if they know they can sell 500 houses, they're probably not going to
the width
leave
2
just
feet.
because of the garage.
Well, if the city requires it, they have to.
Okay.
Or they just don't build here.
Right.
So that's just something to consider, and that was something, last time this got brought up, that was something that was a concern of the planning commission was, are we going to be attractable to development? Frankly, I don't care if we're attractable or not, from that standpoint.
I don't give a shit if they want to build here. They don't want to build here.
I mean, because it may scare away national builders. I have a national builder. I would have preferred a custom home on the lot that I did, but it's just, it is what it is.
I think
That's what I could afford at the
if
time.
we do want to slay this now and figure out a minimum now, I think your method is the best that you suggested.
I mean,
if we want to set a square footage now, I mean,
Is-
it would have to go to council anyways. We'd probably have time to figure out where the state legislature lands by then anyway.
You said 440 was a.
440 is a 22 by 20, which is our it's your 2-stall garage.
It's the double stall. So it's a double stall or a 2-stall garage, 18-foot door, 22 feet gives you, what, 2 feet on each side. So we're already there. We just don't have the width and the depth in that 440. Do we really care? I mean, do we really care if someone builds a single stall that's double deep?
No.
I mean, that,
Yeah.
I I don't care,
No.
because they're gonna have the room to do the way they wanna do it.
And at the 440, the 22 deep, 20 wide, 22 deep would park a full-size pickup truck with the 6.5 foot box. A lot of them aren't coming with the 6.5 foot box, but it would be able to do
Right.
it. You won't have room for garbage containers though.
Right.
At that.
But if you were wider, if you were 20, well,
If you were 20 by 20 deep by 22 wide, you would.
yeah,
You'd have room.
yeah, which meets our minimum.
Yeah.
At your garage door, your main garage door,
16 by 8.
16.
I mean, I think I'm coming to the same conclusion I think we did last time. I think are we over dictating it?
Yeah, I almost feel like maybe the 440 is appropriate for a minimum. We're saying the minimum you can build is a 2-stall.
I-
If we wanted to go further, you could say minimum 2-stall 440, minimum 3-stall this, or minimum 1-stall. Maybe even we do allow 1-stalls. I don't know. Probably not.
I think the only change we made last time was the attached and detached and the medium density without basements. I think that's where we increased it last time, was because those homes don't have any storage at all.
But they could have a shed.
Not if you're in a attached.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they.
And the R3s are typically townhome style neighborhoods, but they're not townhomes. They're perceived as townhome style neighborhoods.
Brayburn is R3.
Brayburn.
So our R3,
Brayburn is?
we amended the code, I'm gonna say it's a couple of years ago. I don't wanna say to get rid of PUDs, but to make R3 zoning probably more attractive to developers than PUDs. And so, a lot of the newer developments coming in have been zone R3.
Okay.
Where do the villas fit in?
That's where I was thinking was the villas.
Are they R1?
No, I'm thinking most of them are R3. And
R3?
so villas as in like the detached townhomes.
So we still, see, that just seems odd to me, because, those villas are intended for small families. We require essentially a two-stall garage.
Yeah.
Now,
They
I'm
almost
one who
all
thinks
of
you
them
can
will
never
be.
have a big enough garage, but it just seems odd to dictate.
Yeah.
Especially for a villa where you might have
You might only have one car.
one car. And you just added, what, to the price of their home. I don't know.
So, based on head nods, the consensus I'm hearing right now is an agreement on 22 feet width for a 2-car garage. To try to figure out how to codify it, either I can say, a 2-car garage is going to be a minimum of 22 feet, and I'm hoping that you can assign a length as well. A 3-car garage would be, if you add 12 feet onto it for a 3rd stall. My understanding, homes are typically built in even increments. 2 feet, not 1 foot.
I was saying I was fine with leaving 440 as 440, because you could either do 22 by 20, like,
Yeah.
which way you orient will depend on other things, whether it's
Yeah.
deep or wide.
Part of me feels like it feels good enough, but are we still hearing issues even with it the way it is?
I'm going to lean on you guys as far as personal experience goes. I mean,
Mine's not big enough.
Mine's not either. I
Not
wish it
gonna
was
warrant.
quadruple the size, but I want to respect the people that maybe don't want
Yeah.
that much garage. I don't want to force them to.
And I'm that person. I don't
Yeah.
need more garage. Our garage is fine.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I feel like the more garage you have, you just clutter it with shit.
You do.
If you have less garage, you prioritize, and you don't buy as much garbage that you don't need, or you get rid of
You
the stuff
purge.
before you bring in the new thing, right? You don't need
Or
the
you
new
park in
thing
your
until the
driveway.
old thing goes away.
Yeah,
So,
you'll see all my cars in the driveway, not in my garage.
but I just, to me, again, it is that dictating, that you're dictating that your lifestyle is the lifestyle that everyone else must live. And it forces the price of housing up, and that is not that's not what we should be in the business of doing, is forcing houses to be as expensive as we can let the builders get. I do, however, get if you're a new home buyer, you don't know the questions to ask. And so someone can take advantage of you and sell you something that isn't actually accurate. And that I have a problem with. So that's why I'm okay saying, like, you can't sell a 3-car garage that isn't actually a 3-car garage.
I think there's a reasonable minimum.
Yeah. And to me, this is a perfectly reasonable minimum.
Yeah.
And if the issue is that people are selling 3-car garages that aren't, then that's we solve that solution differently. And it is not by forcing everyone to have a 3-car garage.
And
Do we end up in the same spot that we started?
Yeah, so my interpretation is to leave the code as it is.
My only suggestion, if we didn't, would be 2-stall garages are 440, 3-stall garages are plus 240 on that,
well,
680 or 660, because that's another 20 by 12 stall.
and that begs the question of, I mean, we had the person come in 2 weeks ago, or not 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, with they wanted to convert the garage into a living space. And so how do you deal with that? I think where this is, the only spot I actually think this is really applicable is with new development. I don't think this is
Could be part of the development agreement? That's well, no, because the
This-
development agreement's for the developer, and the builders come after that.
Not every project has a development agreement.
Yeah, and
And
that all comes
but-
after that.
But that's where I think this is applicable, is when we're seeing new large construction come in. I don't think in a one-off situation of someone's building a one house, Sarah, for example,
Yeah.
of her own property and dictating what she wants there. I don't see this being, I see this as fine the way it is. I think where the concern is when we have these builders come in. And that's the challenge of all of this is, I mean, to your point of affordability of how do we rectify so we're not getting cookie cutter in all garage, but of the 50-50, or, I mean, it's a tough.
Sure. So enforcement-wise, if we change something, it would be across the zoning district. So we can't say if you're, zone R1, but you're part of development, you have this requirement, but if you're not part of a subdivision, you have a different requirement. It has to be all the same.
So we would potentially create a bunch of legal nonconformities,
Yes.
which is
Uh,
terrible.
Building code changes every
Yeah.
3 years, so
I mean-
whatever, all of our houses are going to be non-conforming.
And that's where this like the couple of my neighbors who converted their garage to mudroom, they still have the garage door there. It opens all the way, but can you even fit a golf cart in there? And it's just one of those, it's like, obviously we're not, they'd be legal non-conforming.
They would, and I don't know your neighbors, but they would still have to have a minimum 440 square feet of garage space.
Even with though they have 3 garage doors.
The
Then they
doors don't
probably
matter.
are.
Doors don't matter.
Yeah, they are. They'd have the 22 by 20, which is
Yeah.
440. So they'd still be legal as it
It'd
is
still
right
be
now.
legal
The way it's written now.
the way it's written now, and that's where I'm getting at is, do we even have an issue?
I don't
I don't
personally.
think we do.
And that's where when I read this, I was right there.
I think we're a little. I would love for everybody to be able to have bigger garages, but at some point, I think they got to dictate that at time of purchase and make
Yeah.
a business decision when they do so. I think our 440 is a reasonable minimum. I don't want builders building really tiny garages that nobody can park in, which I think that fixes. And then after that,
Make a motion to do nothing?
on that one, perfect.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right,
Okay.
you got your marching orders
Yep.
on that one.
So the second
That's a
item,
fun
okay, the second
Oh.
item,
Well,
Aprons.
I guess,
Just on that one item,
yeah.
you can fix
Yeah.
the.
Do we?
I've got a lot of
Do we
opinions
have?
on this one.
Do we have to vote on that? I suppose it's new
oh, I'm
business.
sorry. Yes, so, I'd appreciate, so if the
So,
direction
all
is
right.
do nothing, then that's what.
We have a motion and a second to leave the code as is for garage sizes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Now you have yours, John.
Thank you.
Hope you
Okay.
can fit that into your schedule.
Yeah, do nothing.
Perfect. I don't think it's what I was
Done and
looking
done.
for, but
Yeah.
that's all right. This one's
Aprons.
interesting.
Okay, so this next one is a discussion on driveway aprons, and I apologize, nothing shows up on the screen here. Or at least not where it's legible. So this was also, I'm gonna say, kind of a complaint about cracked driveways. And, so in Dayton, and I don't know the exact statistics, but I'm gonna say we probably have more newer homeowners than we have older ones. And I don't mean age of the homeowner, just the age of the home. So, with home construction, you'll have an excavator that digs a hole for the foundation is poured, dirt is filled in, and then a driveway goes on. So the area that's filled in is not, I'm gonna call it, it's not natural soil, it's fill, and it's
Backfill.
not necessarily compacted to the same density as the natural soil is. And so over time and with weather conditions and water and such, that fill gets more compacted, and which causes driveways to crack and sink. So the question here is, should the city amend the code to require concrete apron? So an apron being, I don't have a good drawing here. Well, yeah, this kind of shows up. So this is kind of a side view of, here's your garage, here's the driveway, whether it's asphalt or concrete, and then this would be required to be a concrete apron.
No, we don't have
We
any.
do not. We have,
I will start out and say that that problem will not be solved by an apron. That problem is a building code problem. Building code does not specify a maximum compaction density outside the foundation wall. And until you get builders to actually compact it, this problem is solvable, as Jason knows. Compact it. That's it. The builders don't compact it. And they don't compact it because the building code, well, the building code doesn't require it. And
then they spend money that they don't want to spend.
they primarily don't compact. From what I've heard, I talked to some builders on this, because this is an age-old problem that many people have had. It's nothing even new to the new developments we have here. When a basement is dug and then they pour the foundation, inside where the basement is, it's an open cavity, so they try not to compact on the other side of it because they might crack it.
Yeah.
Well, in front of the garage, it's just a stem wall. It's actually not excavated on the back side. There's a little bit of an open cavity there that they have to backfill as well, but the risk of actually cracking it by doing reasonable compaction in front of it isn't the same as the risk of compacting the other part of the house where there's an open cavity on the other side, and they damage the waterproofing that's around it potentially. But there is a real reasonable solution here, but it's a building code solution, and I don't see the building code ever changing to fix it. That won't do it. You're just bridging it.
So-
That's all you're going to bridge a hole that's eventually going to consolidate over time, and then that concrete will crack, and then they'll have to replace the concrete instead.
And to add to kind of our earlier discussion, so I had two neighbors, one on either side of me, get this done this winter. One paid 10 grand, one paid 15 grand.
for the apron.
For the
Put an
aprons.
apron in?
Yes. And so if we're talking about affordability and this is would add money, add cost.
Without
Concrete-
actually fixing anything.
Concrete is, you're adding a new material in, it's not fixing the issue. I mean, one of the things when we had talked earlier today, John, exact same thing that Nick brought up is the compaction test. And can it be part of a building permit, to get maybe 2 compaction tests in front of the driveway, in front of the house, before the driveway is poured?
It would have to be compaction tests like
You'd have to
a
do it.
civil engineer would know, because if you've ever seen a compaction test, if you've gone to a house that they tried to pour, you thought you had suspect soil. Typically, these building pads need to be certified building pads if they're fill sites or virgin material.
Yep.
And you come out, I talked to my building official, and he goes, there have been times where they thought that potentially the bearing soil was suspect. They come, there's a ball that they drop on it. And they drop it, and they determine from that standpoint, well, we know this is 4 feet down. It's a frost. That compaction's happening way down here. The ball that you drop on that is not actually going to tell you. You'd have to do nuclear density gauge, you'd have to do sand cone, you'd have to do something of a Proctor density standpoint, which means you're hiring AET, Howgo,
And
Braun.
again, added cost.
Added cost of which they're not actually there for the general construction of a home. Those trades, I'll call them, those testers, are not involved in the build of a home at all, period. I wish the builders would self-regulate themselves, but this problem occurs 4, 5, 6 years later. They're gone. I really wish the builders would self-regulate themselves on it because it is such an easy issue. It's just effort is all it is. It's a jumping jack, right? It's a motorized tamper with a jumping jack in front of it and lifts and you're done. And me personally, when our house was built, it hopefully won't settle in front because I knocked on the neighbor's door and I said, hey, can I use your garden hose? I'm going to give you some money for the water that I use, and I flooded it. Right, and you can self-compact that way, but these houses also don't have running water at the time that the footing and foundation is poured. So, I don't want to be overly aggressive on this item because I just don't think we can solve it certainly with an apron, we can't. If there's a possibility with the inspection of the house, maybe, but it doesn't, there's no building code that specifies it.
But so I've seen some houses where it gets in and the tar drops right away.
Concrete will hold longer, but it'll crack
I've got
eventually.
an apron and I can tell there's a void under there.
Yeah.
And I can hear it too. But it hasn't cracked yet, but I'm just wondering, the concrete probably just pushes the problem out. But it's still
It
there.
extends it, yeah. I mean, eventually it'll crack. There's a lot of sidewalks that get poured on kind of mushy soil, and they're not repeatedly loaded by a vehicle, and they still crack.
I mean, it also depends too, though, I saw the neighbor to the east of me, or the west of me, I saw his get poured. They put in a rebar slab. That rebar could be spanning the void, for all eternity, and on a normal vehicle, it might not ever have an issue.
Well, and hopefully the compactions or the consolidation's already occurred.
Right.
Right? It's, what my fear would be is we've got an extra $3,500 or whatever for the builder to do this, and it doesn't fix the problem underneath. It cracks. Maybe it doesn't, typical ones are settling in 3 to 5 years, and this cracks in 7 to 8 years instead because concrete is able to bridge it a little bit longer. It's still a problem within the typical ownership cycle of a house.
So
and I would just love to see that fixed from the builders instead. But
Yes, does this provide a Band-Aid for people buying new homes though, because it does span that excavation gap and it takes longer for it to crack or tip or whatever, and then you can mud jack it and get it back to where it is, where asphalt you have to tear it out and redo it. So
What does this add to the cost? I mean, you're doing less tar, but you're doing concrete. Is it just an extension of the sidewalk, or is it
the concrete guy's already there. doing
Yeah.
sidewalks,
That's what I wanted.
right?
Sidewalk.
Maybe it's
You know.
a push and it really.
So I mean, the 10 grand. I mean, did those people get multiple bids? I mean, that's crazy town. But yeah, during a regular construction, I mean, maybe 3 grand. It's probably
concrete.
more.
I mean,
More.
there's also removal
Yeah,
with those
yeah.
and
Yeah.
recompaction and
Yeah,
other things,
yes,
right?
yes.
So there's other costs
bringing
there.
in, bringing in
Yeah.
aggregate.
In reality, the builder's going to sequence this in the way that's most economical for them. I'd be shocked if it's more than $1,500.
Yeah.
Right?
They'll,
I mean,
they'll
it's
pour it when
just-
they pour their garage
just mud.
floor.
Yeah, I mean, mine's been tipping, and I've had it mud jacked once. Actually, my garage floor had to get mud jacked too because the whole garage was a bathtub that had to get filled up. And
Yeah.
I was on him from day one about compacting it properly. He used the green block as a reason why he couldn't compact it. Then the ground froze, and then he tried water, and my whole garage floor is already sinking and stuff. So yeah, it's an issue, but. The mud jacking gave me probably 10 more years plus with my apron.
Yeah,
It
the mud
fixed it
jacking's
well,
a good thing. You
so
can get underneath that.
It's a smaller cost fix as opposed to repouring with asphalt, taking it out because you got a 3-inch gap now at your driveway. So I still feel like it's it's better than we have now, and knowing that the builders aren't gonna self-regulate and do the compaction. I mean, I think I'd be for it. I think it provides new housing, at least a little better product.
Seems reasonable, yeah. I wish there was a better method
Yeah. I
to
agree.
do it, to just get the compaction to occur, and I thought about this ever since the packet came out, of what could you do? I don't think you can write a city ordinance to amend building code. I think that'd be
No.
kind of weird. So from there, I don't know what you can do to force the builder to do it right, so then I probably go to your method of it's probably better than nothing. And I hadn't considered the mud jacking. It does provide more feasible repair if potentially they can get to it before it cracks.
So,
But then should we ask them to put rebar in it?
well, and that's just it, is if we're gonna
So
do
it does
this,
crack, it stays tight.
if we're gonna do this, we should put rebar in it, which is added cost. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, just a mesh though, right? Metal
no,
mesh.
it was like number 4s,
Okay,
at least what my neighbor got in his.
okay.
I mean,
Yeah, but I mean the mesh will hold the crack tight
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
though, right? I mean that's
Yeah.
all you're actually looking to do
Yeah.
for the most part.
I don't think he doweled it in the garage
I
floor.
hope not.
He thought about it, but
Keep them two separate things.
I advised him not to.
Garage floor's not moving; it's sitting on a footing that's 4 feet down.
Right.
Everything in front is clay; it'll move.
I don't know. You have any thoughts on this one?
I have a gravel driveway.
Yeah.
So you just throw more gravel.
It actually sounds better and better the more I think about
Just
it.
put more gravel right up there well, we do have to get the gravel off the grass every spring, which my husband hates. He would like it paved, and I was like, do you have any idea how much it's going to cost? Have you seen our driveway? Also, anyway, so I have no strong opinion. We can't dictate building code. Well, my only thought is if we put something in our code, but your average, I am not your average resident who like studied the code before I decided to build in Dayton because I needed my impervious service. I needed to know how many animal units I could have. I needed to know how big I could build a structure. But if I would have read that code, I've been like, oh, compaction's an issue. I'm going to talk to my builder about compacting in front. But like the average person doesn't read our code. So it's not like we can put anything there to trigger a conversation from the customer to the builder.
I tried that. I tried to talk to the builder. That's all I said.
Yeah. But I don't have a strong opinion on this one. So I would go with people who know more and have more experience.
I think it's better than nothing.
My only concern would be adding cost to the house. Housing is already so expensive.
Yeah.
That would be my only concern.
So I'm going to throw an oddball one in here for more from an aesthetic standpoint. If you look at, in my house in particular, the way the sidewalk from the front door comes in, if we were to do this of a 4 foot, those two concrete panels would not ever line up.
Yeah.
And it would look really weird in a lot of the types of homes that we get built by the spec builders. And so
Is that because you're landscaping, or why is there?
no,
Where the sidewalk
the
comes out.
sidewalk, the way the sidewalk comes right into the driveway. Now, like my neighbor's house his garage is set back from his front porch. Mine's the other way around. My porch is, if we go back to the garage drawing that John had up, it would work here where the house is set back from the garage, but where the house is in, there's a good distance there, but my sidewalk comes right in, and it would aesthetically look weird. It's not how a lot of the builders are that way.
Maybe the builders should think more about their designs.
I don't disagree with you on that. I'm just throwing an oddball devil's advocate thing in here. Are we going to require this apron on all the townhomes that are built,
Every driveway, other than gravel.
What if somebody were to replace their driveway? Well, do they need a driveway permit? We don't do driveway permits. Do we?
Not for replacement. If it's a new or expanding driveway, then we do require permits.
A permit. Okay.
So, yeah, when my neighbor was getting his quote, I was half thinking about it because I have one spot It's about a foot by a foot, or water pools, but it doesn't bother me. I thought about it, and I was like, well, how do I tie this into my existing sidewalk? And if you walk around our neighborhood, all the neighbors have that sidewalk coming in at the same spot, more or less.
So they need to make it like 6 feet, or is it?
It would just look weird with the way some of the houses are.
You'll never get it right.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit concerned with requiring this. I think we have this conversation in basically those production builders are where a lot of these issues are occurring.
Yep.
You know, if somebody were to go build a garage out on if you were to build a garage on your lot, right? I think the odds of having a settlement in front of that, because the contractor may be different, don't want to disparage the contractors that are here, that may not be the issue. Or say you wanted to expand your driveway, newer expanded driveway, and expanded driveway would require a permit. Your garage was there for 30 years, it's done settlement.
Yeah.
You know, or your garage, it's something on a slab on grade. I think those definitely exist if it's just a garage all by itself. Don't have this issue, and they would be required to put an apron in front of it, and that would potentially add cost to not just the house, but that would be.
Because particularly in that case, they're not doing they don't have any other concrete need. So you wouldn't, it's, because I see in the middle of building, you have the concrete guy there anyway, what's the big deal, adding a little bit more? But if you're doing a new asphalt driveway on an existing.
You gotta bring in a concrete sub.
Just for this little itty bitty strip, that would,
that would not be cheap to bring in a concrete sub just to do that if you were gonna have an asphalt driveway. So it would have to be carte blanche, it would have to be across the board.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a concern too.
New driveways, right?
What's that?
Not necessarily expanded. But
Newer expanded driveways,
Yeah.
Or expanded driveways,
Newer.
or driveways that didn't exist.
It's really a problem with the new home.
Yeah, it's a new home problem.
And then the material's a wash, it sounds like.
Yeah.
In a new
Trucks
home,
are-
yeah.
You're already there.
Would staff be interested in having a conversation with their building official to see if there is a option to find a way to get the builders to compact in the front? I know I had a conversation with mine that he didn't think that was all that feasible, but
I've not talked with our building official. I mean, we've.
It would require a
we've
backfill
talked
inspection.
internally.
it'd be they'd have to schedule a backfill inspection probably.
Yeah.
And then we'd have to be there while they backfilled in front of the garage. And we'd have to see them compacted with a jumping jack or another compactive device in lifts. Because the building code does say it needs to be compacted in lifts, but it doesn't say how big of the lifts, doesn't say whether it has to be compacted, it just needs to be done in lifts. So the building code's super vague.
Yep. So I'll say when we do driveway inspections, we're looking at, is it there and is it 28 feet or less width at the curb? And that's it.
But you schedule so many inspections with the build of a house, right? At dig, at footings, you just don't do it at backfill.
Right.
You do it at framing. There's so many inspections that need to get scheduled. Is it possible if the city did want to solve the actual root cause, add another inspection? But the question would be, there isn't a performance standard for them to meet, so you wouldn't be able to test for it. But the building code does say compacted in lifts.
Yeah.
Compacted and in lifts.
Yeah. Yep.
It's kind of open for interpretation, but I think there's probably a lot of building codes that are open for interpretation as well that might get handled differently from locale to locale.
That would also require the inspector to actually do their job, though. I mean, we just had a big building built, and it got inspected, and the inspector missed some stuff. My hay guy, who's a structural engineer, did not miss it. And so he's the one who informed me that there were some very key pieces that were not in my barn, so I contacted the builder, and he came back and put them up. But it had passed inspection. We can do all these things, but if the inspectors don't just rubber stamp everything and walk out again, then it doesn't do any good anyway.
I would say the city does hire an inspection services team, so the city could
Hire a different team?
or hire internal or whatever the appropriate resolution is to that. Yeah, at some point, somebody's going to not do their job, right?
And then, it takes hours and hours and hours to build a house. The inspector is there for what, 10 hours maybe, if you add it all up?
Yeah.
I mean,
He's just not gonna catch everything.
my hay guy walked in and immediately said, "Where are these?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, you need to have these diagonal braces here." And I was like, "I don't know." And I was like, it was inspected and passed. He's like, "It shouldn't have, and you need to contact your builder." And he gave me word for word what to tell my builder. So I was like,
I had the same thing when I built my 4-season porch, and my roofing guy the inspector came out past me. Roofing guy came out and said, "You need to add this, this, and this before I'll roof it." And he said that, he said that it's not per code.
Yeah. I was so mad, and I'm very grateful my hay guy happens to be a structural engineer. Like,
Impressive combination.
it was.
Yeah.
I love that. I love Warren. He's one of my favorite
Must be a
people.
side job.
Which one? Yeah.
Yeah, which one? Yeah.
I give my suggestion, hopefully for staff to talk with the building official though, because I question whether or not what I even suggested is feasible. Because a lot of what gets inspected is the work gets done and then it gets inspected.
Yeah.
What I'm suggesting
Not
is
active.
the inspection
The work
would happen
itself.
at the time the
Yeah.
work is occurring,
That's
which is,
never gonna happen.
I'm very used to that in the line of work of civil engineering. That's how that works. We don't typically come back and inspect after it's done. We inspect during it. But in building inspection, the nature of that work's just different.
Yeah.
And we only have one. Maybe we've got multiple building inspectors, but we've got multiple developments, and we may have 15 foundations getting backfilled at the same time.
Yeah.
In one
We may
neigh-
not have the
in
staff
one
to be able to
neighborhood.
fulfill that.
Yeah.
And so there's, that could be touchy too. I wish you could get the builder to self-regulate and do a good job on the compaction on the front. But
I
I don't know
know,
how to do that.
So on the question of
so-
should we require driveway aprons?
You mean back to the point?
Yes, so we've kind of gone in a circle a little bit, so,
So, see, three things here. One is we table it and ask
Oh.
council to, or
so
staff.
either way, there's not an ordinance written.
Yeah,
So
right,
you-
okay.
you can't recommend approval of something that doesn't exist
Sure.
yet. But you can give
Okay.
me direction on.
But yeah,
writing
we
an
could
ordinance.
request that you talk to the building official and ask for their recommendation on how to handle it, if there's a way through their channel.
I'm pretty sure the building official's gonna point to the city engineer
Yeah.
and say, help.
Yeah, fair. So, I mean, it's probably not the best route, right?
Yeah.
The technical feasibility of inspecting all that actively as it's being poured is challenging.
Super challenging.
Second option we have here is to say we don't need it because, as you stated, it's not the best method to fix it. And the third option is it's better than what we have now. It buys the homeowners a little bit more time before a failure, and the fix could be cheaper because you can mud jack it as opposed to replacing your asphalt.
And my question would be, is it a wash, size, or cost-wise? So, and if it is, and I mean, you could just
Yeah.
simply say, 2 feet or greater to fix the continuity problem, because having two 4-foots overlap, that looks kind of funky, but if you just got a 2-foot, I don't know.
It may be a wash at a new build, but it's, it's
Yeah.
obviously definitely not on a
Well, I
different
wouldn't
situation.
require it on
But
on a re-
it might be the best option we've got, and I do think that's what we're here for.
Yeah, I wouldn't require it for rebuilds
right.
or existing
It'd be
properties.
for new
right?
driveways.
Only for brand new driveways in
I-
new construction.
I would only require it on new construction structures, not even new driveways.
Because your building's already like
Your
your building.
your
is set up.
building should already be settled.
It would, so I'm thinking, the enforcement side of it, before we would issue a certificate of occupancy for the home, it needs a driveway in including the apron.
Yeah, that could work.
Yeah.
If it was for new builds only.
And
Yeah.
and if it's tied with the CO, that's only
Yeah.
gonna be for
Yep.
new builds.
I mean, we require landscaping, so that's how
Yep.
we
Could work very
enforce
well.
that, is tying it to the CO.
Yeah.
I mean, when I refer to the I understand that you guys understand this, but for anyone watching this, the CO is a certificate of occupancy that you need to live in the house permanently. We issue
So then
temporary.
this would only affect driveways into houses, though, not like if you have a detached garage. Does that need?
Detach is
that's
probably
not-
slab on grade.
Yeah, so that's not going to have the same issue.
No.
Okay.
Still
Okay.
foundation.
Yeah, no. Yeah, but it won't need the backflow.
Do they
It wouldn't
have a
have the
footing?
void.
Do they have a footing on a slab?
I
on grade?
guess it
It
depends.
depends on.
Maybe.
It depends.
You could.
Yeah, you
Nobody
could
said.
if it's got a second
I
story.
would. I would just I mean, we're not gonna see new construction, production builders building detached garages.
No.
Yeah.
So
No.
we could
Yeah.
just leave it at that.
Yeah.
and-
Yeah.
I think it's better than nothing.
Without causing a headache for other
Yeah.
things. And
I don't know
causing-
how you do it
adding
on the
cost
building
to people
side.
who don't need it.
I don't know how you do it on the building inspection side. I just don't think it can
Yeah.
work.
I agree. Logistically, we're not set up for that.
So then are we
Building code
recommending
itself
that
is-
you
You wanna-
do this?
I don't know where we're going.
Does anyone want to make a recommendation for John to draft up an ordinance on this?
I'll make the recommendation to include a 4-foot apron, concrete apron as drawn in our packet for new home construction garage/driveways, however you want to word that.
So, attached garages on new construction.
Yes,
Prior to getting a CO.
yes.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right, motion passes 4-0 for John to come up with an ordinance.
I'm sorry, I was writing. Who was the
Oh,
motion and
I'll
second?
motion.
I was second.
yeah,
Colin. Okay.
sorry. Bad luck. All right,
I would forgive you.
next item is,
Isn't that it?
no, announcements.
Yes.
Notice and announcements.
Yeah, so looking, we're hoping to, or planning to have a council workshop on Tuesday, April 23rd to discuss the master plan. I guess my question is, are you guys available? So this would be. You know,
I conflict.
you've
I
got a night-
overlap. It's
Yep.
my council meeting nights.
I don't know if I technically I teach Tuesday and Thursday nights, but I have a co-teacher, so she's like covering class, but, April has been really busy, so, and her dad is dying, so I'm not sure she can cover class for me, so I don't think I can be there.
It's a workshop that would go 5:30 to 6:30 or something, or
Correct.
5 to 6:30.
5 to 6:30.
I actually have a conflict.
Okay.
If it were 5 to 6:30,
May
I
is-
could, I would have to leave promptly on time in order to make it to my other meeting.
Okay, I'm hearing the majority though can't. So,
In May and beyond, I'm fine, because my semester's done, so then I can.
okay. I guess maybe what I'll do is just kind of send out an email to the commissioners and council and work on a date. So generally this would either be on a council night or a planning commission night. So the planning commission on first Thursday of the month and the council on the second and fourth Tuesday. So sometime in May we'll look at. Okay. Otherwise, the next planned meeting for the planning commission is Thursday, May 2nd. We will have, I know that we will have a project for Quick Trip on Maple Court. So this was recently heard by, or concept plan was reviewed by the planning commission. And then otherwise, I'm suspecting we'll have a dozen interim use permits for home businesses. Just kidding. That is the only item I think we have at this time. We may have a second first concept plan for a residential project. Not quite sure about that, but
Where?
in the 2050 area. So within our comp plan, we have a sewer staging plan that goes by decades, and so this area, I believe, is in the post-2050 area.
Interesting.
Is that the one? Okay. Oh.
There's-
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.